Hello and welcome back to the lecture series of Advanced Java. I am Shruti Yagnik and today we are going to study the most important interfaces of servlets. They are the ServletContext and ServletConfig namely. Okay, the basic idea of both these servlets is what we are going to discuss in the video lecture. We are going to see both of them in details and we are going to see how you are applying them practically. So the basic idea of the interfaces. We are going to start with the basic similarity between both the interfaces, the ServletContext as well as the ServletConfig. Both these interfaces are used to give initial values to your servlet. Now, these things are actually given during setup of the servlet. Okay, and these are mentioned in the web.xml file or your deployment descriptor, and they are accessed from this particular file. ServletConfig interface. In this particular interface, we are going to discuss the following points. The first is, now when is this particular ServletConfig object created? This object is created as and when your server is loaded into memory. This is when your object for ServletConfig is created. Okay, so this is when your servlet will be able to access all the initial setup parameters when it is loaded into, after it is loaded into memory. Now, how you are making use, how a servlet is making use of this object and which methods are being accessed, this we will see practically when we are doing our ServletConfig demo. The ServletContext interface. In this, we are going to discuss all the same points that we had discussed in ServletConfig, but with certain differences. Now, when is this ServletContext object created? This object is created when you are deploying your web application onto your container. This is the time when you are loading your whole project and deploying it on your server. Okay. Next is how you are going to use this ServletContext object and which methods you will call on this. You will come to know when we do the demo. ServletConfig first. Here we are going to have a parameter, say username. And this username we are going to pass on to the servlet during running as configuration parameters, and let us see how we can do this. Here we are going to have, we are having two specific servlets, that is first servlet and second servlet, and let us see whether the entries are there in the web.xml. Yes, it has a servlet tag for first servlet, servlet tag for second servlet, servlet mapping for first servlet and servlet mapping for second servlet. So my web.xml is perfect. Okay, now what I will do is, there will be changes for specific servlet inside the web.xml for that servlet. Now I want to pass my username to my second servlet. So servlet config object will be created for second servlet by the Tomcat or by the web container. So let us see how this is created. This is my second servlet. Here I want to access the values that I am passing as configuration parameters. Okay, so if I want to access the values in second servlet, let me just tell you what changes I need to do. I need to go in the servlet tag of second servlet, that is here. And here as I am supposed to define the parameters. So let me write init param and init param close. Inside init param I am supposed to write param name and param value. This is the first change that I am supposed to do. Now here I will pass name. Let me write username, and here let me write username is admin. Okay, now this value can be passed only to second servlet. You cannot pass it to first servlet. We will see this with the help of a demonstration. So let us go here. Now let us see how to use this parameter, this object. So servlet config reference is equal to get ServletConfig. Now this get ServletConfig is a method which is returning ServletConfig. Okay, now get ServletConfig. Now config dot get init parameter, and here I can specify the name parameter, that is username. Okay, so let me go here and show you. In this, my parameter name was username. Okay, so here this is username, so here I am checking or passing this username as same way, right? So config dot get init parameter. Now let me just print it, out dot println and get init parameter username. Now let me run this code and check. Run second servlet. Second servlet admin. Okay, now let us have a proof that this value can't be accessed by first servlet. So let me just take these two lines and let me copy them to the first servlet. Let me just print a line before so that you can easily get the output. So let me run. Okay, it's null. Some other methods of ServletConfig are println config dot get servlet name and out dot println config dot get ServletContext. Okay, let us run and see the second servlet. Okay, let me put a BR tag so that you can interpret what results you are getting. BR okay, now we can run and check the program. Okay, this is my ServletContext and this is the name of my servlet. That's all for ServletConfig. Let us move on to ServletContext. For ServletContext, we are supposed to do something called as set a global variable. Okay, so global variable you will not set in any of the tags. When you wanted to do something particular for a servlet, like your ServletConfig, you went into the servlet tag and there you wrote the parameter, so as to make this a specific parameter for this servlet only, second servlet only. But now I want things to be accessed globally in all the servlets, be it first, be it second. So for that I am supposed to write my context param here, context param and context param. Inside that, param name and param value. Okay, let me write only user this time, and a user is capital admin. Okay, now this is a global variable, it can be accessed in both these servlets. So let us first check here. Instead of ServletConfig, we will see how we are using it. So ServletContext get ServletContext. Okay, and my this thing was only user, and instead of config I will do context dot get init param. Let me run this. Okay, admin. Now let me copy these two statements in my second servlet. Okay, let me comment it as of now, and let me run this code. Okay, second servlet admin, so it is accessible globally. Okay, now let me show you some of the methods of ServletContext. Okay, the methods of ServletContext are some other methods. It is context dot set attribute, and let me name it username, and let me give it a value of attribute admin, new admin. Let me name it new admin so that you are not confused. Okay, now I have set this attribute. Now I will try to get this attribute. So out.println, and inside that I will print context dot get attribute, and inside that I will write username, and let me just print and see. Let me comment this statement. Let me run and check second servlet, new admin. Okay, so this is how you can get and set the values. Next thing we will check is get and set, and last we will check is out.println context dot get server information. It is going to give me information about my server. As you can see, this is the information of my server, Glassfish open source 4.1.1. okay, and that's all from my side for ServletContext and ServletConfig. Thank you.